Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a huge question that every growing company has to face. How do you take your business global? Now, you might think there's just one way to do it, but really, there are two major playbooks, and they're in a constant showdown for which one is best.
So just imagine for a second. You've launched your company, it's a hit. What's the next move? Do you go slow and steady, carefully dipping your toes into the international waters one country at a time? Or do you just cannonball right into the global market from day one? That's the core dilemma we're talking about.
And look, this isn't just a simple choice about how fast you want to go. These are two completely distinct, well-researched philosophies that have shaped how thousands of companies, from tiny workshops to tech giants, have expanded across the world.
To really get a handle on this, let's give them some names, right? In one corner, we've got the cautious planner, super methodical, doesn't like risk. And in the other corner, we have the global sprinter, built for speed and aiming for immediate worldwide impact.
All right, first up, let's meet our cautious planner. This is the traditional, time-tested approach. You know, the one that pretty much dominated international business thinking for decades. It's all about learning before you leap. Now, this strategy actually has a formal name. It's called the Uppsala model. Researchers came up with this back in the 70s, and the core idea is pretty simple. The biggest thing holding you back from going global is a lack of knowledge. So, how do you fix that? You overcome it gradually, gaining experience in each market, step by step, to reduce all that uncertainty.
And this is the classic way it plays out. A company starts with a really low commitment, right? Maybe they just hire a local agent in another country. Then, as sales pick up and they learn the ropes, they might take a bigger step and set up their own sales office. And only after they've totally mastered that do they even think about the huge step of setting up production abroad. So what's the logic here? It's all driven by this cool concept called psychic distance. Basically, that's just a fancy term for all the differences in culture, language, and business practices between countries. The Uppsala model says, hey, start close to home, where the psychic distance is small. Go to markets that are kind of like yours. Then, as you get more experienced and confident, you can venture further out. But then, the 1990s happened. The world started changing fast. Technology and globalization created this opening for a totally new kind of company, one that just didn't have time for slow and steady. This is our global sprinter, the born global firm. And this quote right here from a 1993 McKinsey article was an absolute game changer. The author, M.W. Rennie, noticed something new is happening. Some companies weren't just adapting to become global, they were created to be global from the get-go. And that one observation kicked off a whole new way of thinking about international business.
So what exactly is a born global? Well, it's a company that sees the entire world as its marketplace right from the very beginning. They don't think of foreign markets as some add-on to their home market. For them, it's all just one big integrated global opportunity. So how do you even define this kind of speed? Well, researchers came up with a key benchmark. A born global company starts its international journey, on average, within just 3 years of being founded. Think about that. 3 years. That is unbelievably fast. And here's the other piece of the puzzle. It's not just about starting early, it's about being seriously committed. A typical born global gets at least a quarter, 25%, of its total sales from other countries. So you can see they're not just dabbling, they are all in. So what made this whole revolution possible? Well, it was really a perfect storm of three things. First, technology. You know, the internet, better logistics. It basically shrank the globe. Second, globalization opened up markets like never before. And third, these new companies could suddenly reach these super specific niche customer groups, no matter where they lived.
Okay, so the stage is set. We've got our cautious planner and our global sprinter. Now it's time for the showdown. Let's put them side by side and really see how they stack up. Real quick, before we jump in, you might be wondering, how do we know all this stuff? Well, researchers have been studying these companies for years, mostly through case studies. That lets them do these really deep dives into how specific companies actually made their global moves. It's pretty fascinating. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you have the gradual path, slow, increasing commitment over time. That's the world of traditional manufacturing. Think car makers like Volvo and Toyota. On the other side, you've got born globals, defined by that speed and sales percentage. And that's the natural habitat for tech and e-commerce giants like Amazon and Google. So they seem like complete opposites, right? One is slow, one is fast, one is old school, one is new school. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you dig into the research, you find out that the most successful companies on both of these paths actually share some really surprising things in common. What researchers found is that the real secret to success might not be which path you choose, but whether you master 4 key things that are critical for both. They call these crossing points. So whether you're a cautious planner or a global sprinter, your success probably comes down to how well you target niche markets, the unique drive of your founder, your ability to build strong networks, and how innovative your supply chain is. These are like the universal keys to global growth. Let's just zoom in on one of those for a second, the entrepreneur themselves. For the person on the gradual path, the most important skill is patience, that ability to slowly, carefully build up knowledge and trust in a brand new market. But for the born global founder, it's all about using their existing international networks and having a global vision just baked into the company's DNA from the very first minute. So, look, the big takeaway here is that this is not just some academic debate. For any business out there with global dreams, understanding this showdown is absolutely fundamental. Why? Because the path you pick has massive real-world consequences. Seriously, this one decision affects everything. A born global strategy, for example, needs totally different funding and a radically different way of operating than a gradual one. It shapes who you hire, how you manage risk, and yeah, it can absolutely determine whether your big international adventure succeeds or fails. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In our world today, with its instant connections, where speed seems to be everything, is that slow, deliberate, knowledge-building approach just an outdated weakness? Or could it be a forgotten strength, one that actually builds a more stable, resilient foundation for success in the long run? Something to think about.